I am the best. Okay, no, not me. I don't mean it. I'm actually just quoting President William Ruto, who earlier this week rolled up for himself a big, beautiful gift of attributes, combining all the 4 presidencies before him. From Jomo Kenyatta to his son Uhuru Kenyatta and everyone in between, President Ruto delivered a detailed self-appraisal, crowning it with the declaration that he is the first person of his academic qualifications to occupy State House. We have the self-appraisal report. Online, the e-citizen appraisal is not looking good, as the Auditor General reveals that over 40 billion shillings cannot be accounted for on the government's services digital platform. On the foreign front, an appraisal is coming up in the United States Senate that could result in the downgrading of Kenya's status as a major non-NATO ally. Apparently, China is the matter at issue. We have that diplomatic report. On Jamila's memo, we cannot play with the future of millions of Kenyan children. A memo to all adults. Bonyo's bone lies between 1 term and 2 terms, and picks a bone with Mudavadi's assertions on elections in Africa. Kaikai's kicker is on the anti-corruption watch tonight, and the match between big fish and small fish. On My Take tonight, we go deep into scripture. And let's pray. Sorry, pardon me.
No, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for your greatest support. You've been supporting this channel, and I really appreciate you for that. We are heading to 15,000. Remember, our journey is 20,000 before the end of the year. We only remaining something like less than 4 months to December or to 2026. But I pray that it is my request that we hit 20,000 before the end of the year, which I know it is possible for us to hit. Now, yesterday at night, during the news gang hour, there's something that Yvonne Okwaro, Bonyo, Kaikai together with Jamila were talking about. Okay, we missed Stephen, we missed Sam Gituku, because Sam Gituku is always among the presenters or the journalists that normally give us their kickers. Now on Bonyo's kicker, I want us to handle them one by one, so that at least you can know what was being said or what was discussed. But before that, let us hear what they were discussing, and then we get now into their kicker.
The news gang is here.
I have combined all my predecessors. You know, I have the courage of Jomo, I have the understanding of Moi, I have the education of Kibaki, and I have the plan we shared with Uhuru Kenyatta. I have no excuse than to do everything that needs to be done in this nation.
There is a thread to this self-appraisal by President William Ruto. He has done it many times. And what we sometimes have to do is to differentiate. Is it talking about his role as President of the Republic of Kenya, or is he talking about his journey, personal journey as William Ruto, starting from his days as a young person in the North Rift all the way to becoming president? And there are times I feel he's thinking out aloud. There's a lot of pinching of the skin to say, I mean, you remember in Nakuru, he said, I look around at this State House and sometimes wonder, oh, kumbe ni mimi sasa, so it's me. You see, there's an element of celebrating self-actualization that he's made it in this journey, starting from his youth to becoming president. But he invites questions about his handling of the presidency, when he starts talking about the qualities of the previous presidents. And I think you sat here, you remember you sat here with Okiya Omtata on this set, who is a presidential aspirant. who felt the question really is not about that of qualification, but that of suitability. And this definitely is one of those questions that a self-appraisal like this can invite.
And, you know, it would seem he's been defending himself from the start, and we've seen an evolution of how that has been. Right now, it's that I'm qualified for the job and this is what we're doing. And you see this perhaps with everything. No, we will continue to provide free primary education. No, the Hustler Fund is working. Okay, but in the beginning, the tone was perhaps slightly different. It was that I was legitimately elected, and the tone was mimi ndio niko kwa sasa for whatever anyone else had. And that at that time, if you recall, it was ODM before getting into the broad-based arrangement that, you know, was putting him under pressure, right? And then at that time, it then moved to now the Gen Z protests and the Kenyans now saying, okay, let's take a look at your track record. But just to show you how this has been something on his mind for a long time, you know, let's listen to this one where he was, you know, again, reminding Kenyans that he was validly elected at the ballot.
Watu walikuwa na matatizo sana. Hata saa hizi bado hawajaamini mimi ni rais, bado wanahangaika Mimi ndio niko hapa kwa sasa. Wajipange. Mimi ndio niko hapa.
So is there an element of shadow boxing? So who are these people that he is referring to that says bado hawajamini ni kina nani hao? And it would seem there are voices in the president's head from, I don't know, who doesn't believe it, regardless of whether they do or not. The law says it, the Supreme Court affirmed the win, and then now it is, I'm the most qualified to do this job, and I'm the holder of destiny. It would seem there are many voices in his head that are constantly challenging him and his presidency that gets him into this defense mode that we're seeing repeatedly. And you know, for a long time, I think we can safely say that has spanned, you know, the first half of his first term.
Now, I want us to start with Yvonne Okwara's kicker because, you know, Yvonne Okwara is, I don't know whether she's normally the leader of this kicker. I don't know. But I think she has a bigger role. She normally has a bigger role to play on Thursday night during the news gam and the kicker. She was talking about the issue of Bible verse, what needs to be done, where, how, referring to the Bible verse. I want us to listen to her.
And you will recall that there was requests, there was summons for them to appear before this, about what, 2 summons before that were not honored?
Yeah, because there had been questions about some 40-something billion that was said to have been collected from e-citizen but didn't make its way into the government's account. Right.
And finally, today they made an appearance. And as we know from that appearance now, the members of the committee asked for time to go through the submissions and the responses that were given by Treasury, and then, you know, call them back. I believe they said they would recall the witnesses should they have additional questions as they go through that presentation that was made today. But Linus, again, you know, these issues that keep coming up on this, and we'll talk about Hustler Fund in a moment, but I'd just like to hear your thoughts around this one.
I actually just have one question tonight.
Okay.
Where will the country be if it were not for the courage of the Office of the Auditor General?
Exactly.
Some of these things are just unthinkable. And, you know, the parliamentarians actually appeared shocked. And that in itself is quite something. Because to shock this parliament, something needs to be really serious. And I just hope that there'll be answers out of these questions. Because what is also constant in this country lately is denial. Just deny.
Yeah.
I saw the peers saying everything is accounted for. Where's the evidence for that? So simply show where the 44.8 billion shillings are. And then that should answer the question that is being raised by the Auditor General. But a big ups to the Office of the Auditor General, where they get the courage to do some of these things. they need to share that around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the Auditor General is one, but also members of civil society are another, because this time, regarding the Hustler Fund, we heard questions now coming from the Kenya Human Rights Commission Executive Director. They also put out a report earlier this week highlighting some of the challenges that they see with the rollout of the Hustler Fund, its effectiveness, its impact, and the repayment method. I'd like us to listen to the Executive Director, Davis Malombe, on this.
Over 9.6 billion had been disbursed, yet there was no measurable impact on the enterprise development or job creations. Loan sizes ranging from 500 to 1,000 were too small to start or grow businesses. Repayment terms of 14 days were unrealistic.
Right, and Sheila Masinda, who's the Executive Director of Transparency International, was also there. They were the joint authors of that report, and let's listen to her.
Still working, we're still giving out money. It's like putting money in a bottomless dark pit.
In a bottomless pit. But listen, I want to give context, because there was of course, swift reaction. I actually noted quite some swift reaction from government on this one. The very same day, we had some responses and some defense from the Ministry of Cooperatives, which is the one in charge of this one. We heard from actually both the PS and the CS. So before we go back into history and sort of context, I want us to just listen to the robust response that came on the same day from both the PS and the CS.
Be seeking to write off. So the portfolio that is totally at risk and it's in default, in terms of, we'll say, is about close between 5 billion to 6 billion.
Just the title itself, it shows that whatever was purported to be done had some sort of veiled political intention.
The facts that are there are not genuine, and the fact that you take 2 months and you take the 2 months as the music. The best way, we are 3 years old, we will be celebrating 3 years in November. In November, we are just a few months away, 2 months away. It would have been better for them to come and discuss with us.
Yes, of course, they said it was veiled political intention that was there. But you know what's interesting, and this is why this context is important, is that these two persons themselves raised the very same issues with the Hustler Fund not too long ago. P.S. Mangeni, actually in May of this year, talked about the challenges they're having with recovering Hustler Fund loans. I'd like us to listen to her, before a parliamentary committee seeking to write off 6 billion shillings in uncollected or non-repayment.
And that's what we'll be seeking to write off. So the portfolio that is totally at risk and it's in default, in terms of, we'll say, is about close between 5 billion to 6 billion.
And at that same event, that was in May this year, she talked about the challenges that they're having with recovery, with trying to trace the people who have borrowed these funds. Remember, this is coming from the same ministry that had earlier, just a few months ago, raised issues that are still being raised today by civil society.
We have graded these people. We are going to institute a mechanism of recovery through incentives and certain sanctions, like now blocking you from accessing those are the enhanced opportunities. If we were to do forceful recovery, again, the challenge will be the law. So we're also looking at the law to see at what point can we introduce forceful recovery.
And at that same function, even with them seeking to write off 6 billion shillings, they were seeking for more money.
Doing better, we need to enhance their limit. And the moment you enhance someone's limits from 500 to 10,000, you have to fund. And that's the reason why we're asking for additional funding to fund the 4.5 million that will be graduating to the bridge, but also at the same time also to take care of the new applicants who are onboarding Hustler Fund every day.
Now, I've been reflecting a lot lately. And while I'm not one to regularly quote scripture, I've never been a fan of hyper-religiosity. I do believe there's a kind of quiet, timeless wisdom in certain teachings. And that wisdom, regardless of what you believe, often has a way of speaking to leadership and to purpose. Take the book of Proverbs, for instance. It says in chapter 27, verse 2, and I quote, "Let someone else praise you, and not your own mouth, an outsider, and not your own lips." Now, there is something so grounding in that, a reminder that impact doesn't need a microphone, that true leadership doesn't always come wrapped in self-congratulation, and that when the applause starts to come only from the stage and never from the crowd, perhaps it's time to listen a little more closely. You see, we're living in an era where some feel the need to remind us constantly of their greatness, of their unmatched brilliance. But Matthew 6:2 warns us about that kind of trumpet blowing. It says, "So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do, because they have received their reward in full." There it is, a timeless lesson. If you must keep saying it, then maybe it's not being seen. If you have to insist on your qualifications, maybe they're not as obvious as you think. Leadership at its best isn't performative. It's not a CV read out loud. It's not about whose voice is loudest in the room. It's about who listens after the noise fades. Paul, in Philippians 2:3-4, offers what may be the most radical idea of all. He says, "Do nothing out of self-ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." So imagine that. Imagine a leadership that seeks to uplift others, not outshine them. One that draws strength from service, not from spectacle. Where humility is not a branding exercise, but a quiet discipline. So no, I don't often quote the Bible, but sometimes it's hard not to. Because whether you are a believer or not, these words still hold. And they ask us to remember one thing, that real leaders don't tell you they're great. They just lead and let the work speak. That's my take tonight.
The second person that I will like us to listen to is Kai. Kai was talking about the issue of the EACC, and is asking a question that all of us are asking, that what about the big fish? Because remember, if suppose we didn't have the Auditor General, then Kenya will be in a very great mess. I remember at one time, I don't know which member of parliament was that, who said that Kenya is getting into a deep shit. And it is true. The things that sometimes we normally say unknowingly comes to be true. I want us to listen to Kai.
On my kicker tonight, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, early this week released its National Ethics and Corruption Survey 2024. The EACC explained that the purpose of the survey was to establish the status of unethical practices and corruption in the country. It was no surprise that the survey established that corruption is the second most pressing problem in Kenya, the first problem being unemployment. Then the survey went big on what the findings described as the most common form of corruption in Kenya, and that is bribery. The 92-page report then went on to list professionals perceived to be engaged in unethical practices and corruption. As usual, police officers took the lead, followed closely by officers of the Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA. Chiefs followed, then county inspectorate officers. Lawyers closed the charts for the top 5. Journalists grabbed the final spot in the list of 16 sections perceived to engage in unethical practices and corruption. Detailed as a survey it was, but then what? What is new? And more consequentially, what next? I propose an internal exercise for the EACC, a very simple exercise. How about a reverse survey for all officers of the Anti-Corruption Commission EACC? The survey should have only 2 questions. The first question is, what do we know as EACC? The second question is, what have we done about it? In other words, the EACC should be more robust, bold, and honest in reflecting over the true state of the fight against corruption in Kenya. I have no survey findings to submit on this one, but common perceptions are that the war on corruption in Kenya only focuses on the small fish and spares the big fish. An ironic coincidence, this same week, a report by the Auditor General revealed that some 44.8 billion shillings could not be accounted for on the e-Citizen platform. Now, this is big time stuff. 44 billion. Hello, EACC. Any word on e-Citizen? And by the way, how much in comparison do police officers cost the public in bribes? 44 billion? What if we are always backing up the wrong tree when it comes to fighting corruption? I suspect we are. Without requiring a survey, official corruption is Kenya's grandest problem. From Goldenberg to Anglo-Leasing and NYS to Aurora Kimorer, the fictitious dams, we all know that big fish corruption is an industry in itself. To EACC, do not pretend not to know. You need no surveys. You just need courage. And courage does not just to chase around traffic policemen, but also to go for the big-time looters who siphon public funds on a daily basis. You also need the courage to read not just your own National Ethics and Corruption Survey, but also the periodic shocking reports from the Office of the Auditor General. Have the courage to face not just the small fish, but also the big fish. Now, have the courage to tell us something about e-Citizen. That is my kicker.
Now, the third person is Jamila. Jamila is handling the issue of schools and the future of the young people. And she's saying that the leaders, politicians are hovering around with choppers going for the women empowerment, yet the classrooms, like for instance, we all witnessed what happened in Tarakaniti, where Kithure Kindiki is coming from, a school which is full of mud, and which is built using mud, and Kithure Kindiki is hovering around, dashing 64 shillings to women instead of collecting that money to go and do something in his village schools.
On my memo tonight, the leadership of this country owes Kenyans answers. Serious answers. Because you don't play games with the education of a nation. Tusilete mchezo kwa elimu. In recent days, we've seen disturbing images of at least 42 public schools in Tharaka Nithi operating in utterly embarrassing conditions. Mud-walled classrooms, collapsing roofs, children learning on bare floors. And this is 2025. Let's talk about capitation, or rather the confusion around it. Schools across the country are receiving less money per student. That's a fact. The capitation allocation has dropped, and no one is giving clear, honest answers about why this is happening. School heads are pleading, parents are stressed, learners are worried. And in universities and colleges, the uncertainty is even worse. The new higher education funding model was meant to give hope. Instead, it's created more questions than answers. Students aren't sure whether they will get to study. Institutions aren't sure what to expect. And parents are left navigating a maze without a map. This is not how a country secures its future. Let's be honest. The future of this country is not some gift we generously bestow on the next generation. It is their right. Whether we like it or not, they will inherit it. And they will inherit the consequences of our decisions or our negligence. The children sitting on stones in open-air classrooms today are the ones who will sit in boardrooms tomorrow. The students stressed because they haven't received funding are the ones who will be our doctors, our lawyers, our members of parliament, our CSs. And the irony? Those currently in power, the cabinet secretaries, the directors of education, the senior technocrats, will all be replaced. And not because of their kindness, and not even because of public demand, but because time doesn't negotiate. I speak of the inevitable replacement because there's a dangerous trend we are seeing. A generation of leaders who act as if they can play God with the fate of future generations. Decisions are made recklessly. Money disappears mysteriously. Policies are drafted without proper planning. And when questioned, the answers are vague, if they come at all. Education is not a favor. It's a foundation. When funding becomes uncertain, when learning conditions remain appalling, when the system is left to drift, then it's not just the students who suffer. It's the nation that crumbles. It's time for the leadership to stop pretending that the future is optional. It is not. And if they can't protect it, then at the very least, they should try not to sabotage it. And that is my memo.
And the last person is Bonyo. Bonyo's bone is talking about African electoral elections in terms whereby he's referring to the statement that was made by Musalia Mudavadi when Mudavadi said that there is no single president in Africa, not only in Africa but everywhere, who has ever served for one term. But I don't know because I remember Donald Trump served for one term and then came for another term after some quite some time. I don't know whether William Ruto can do that.
Tonight, I'm picking a bone with none other than Kenya's Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, arguably Kenya's top diplomat. Your recent remarks on African presidential elections, they were grossly misleading and a mockery of our democracy. Now, just in case your busy prime ministerial calendar has already moved on, let me remind you what you said. And I want to paraphrase you. You said it is impossible to defeat an African president when seeking a second term if the Constitution allows them. Whether that was a gaffe or a cynical joke or part of a well-scripted 2027 political chess move, you are wrong and dangerously so, Mr. Mudavadi. Well, you'll say it was your opinion. You have the right to it. And you do. But here's the thing. Not when that opinion ridicules democracy. Not when it undermines the power of the ballot. Not when it suggests that elections in Africa are mere formalities, rubber stamps for incumbents. So allow me, Bwana PCS, to take you through a few facts. Because African presidents have lost elections in their first term, and not just one. In 1991 in Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, the founding father of Zambia, lost the first multi-party elections to Frederick Chiluba. He didn't even finish a first term in a new democratic setup. That is democracy. In 2011, still in Zambia, Rupia Banda lost to Michael Sata after stepping in for President Levi Mwanawasa. One term, done. In their neighboring Malawi, Joyce Banda, Africa's second female head of state, served from 2012 to 2014. Then came the 2014 elections. She finished third, her attempt to annul the results thrown out by the courts. In Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, elected in 2011, ran out of luck, defeated in 2015 by Muhammadu Buhari, the first time in Nigeria's history that an incumbent lost. That is democracy at work. In the north, Tunisia, after the Jasmine Revolution, Mohamed Marzouki was elected. He loses re-elections in 2014, peacefully. Again, that is democracy. These are the facts, Mr. Mudavadi, and they matter. Because when a senior leader like yourself paints African elections as fixed second-term parade, you send the wrong message to the voters, the youth, and to the future leaders. You reduce democracy to a tired ritual. You make a joke of choices. You insult the struggles of Kenyans who fought for political freedom. But let's be honest, your comments didn't land in isolation. They come hot on heels of similar remarks from politicians in your corner who've made even more bold and more dangerous suggestions, the kind that makes Kenya's democracy sound like a stage show. The kind that make a 10-year presidential term proposal sound like it's already on the table. And this, Bwana Prime CS, is the most troubling part. Because Kenya is already on the edge, politicians are throwing barbs, tempers are high, and the people, especially the youth, are watching closely. So when someone like you, a respected voice, a symbol of government diplomacy, starts throwing around tired old cliches about African elections, you are not helping. You are fanning the flames. We need leaders who protect the promise of democracy, not preempt its outcome. Kenya doesn't need politicians recycling despair into doctrine. It needs men and women who believe in the constitution they swore to protect. That is my bone tonight.
But after all, guys, that is all I have for now. I also would like you to tell me what you think at the comment section. Please don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to like these videos, so that by liking, the video is going to reach a lot of people, and many people are going to watch the video.